It's the piercing. That was driving me crazy because I'm like, is that piercing? Did it come with the mask?
What the that mask? Are you gonna take it off?
Drive-by movies, you're watching
Fresh releases.
My name's Blaze.
And my name is James.
And this week we're talking Amazon Prime's new feature film, Totally Killer.
Come on out. The water's warm.
Just so you know,
I don't do blowjobs. You pee out of that thing.
Just think, maybe if she did do blowjobs, she'd still be alive.
Yeah, let's not make that the lesson.
Amazon and Blumhouse's Totally Killer features the infamous Sweet 16 killer who returns 35 years after his first murder spree to claim another victim. 17-year-old Jamie accidentally travels back in time to 1987, determined to stop the killer before he can start. And whoa, hold on, that sounds like two different movies right there. Is that like all the synopsis? And no, that's all in the same movie, but this movie holds together a pretty like over the top bizarre plot for the most part. I would say the time travel stuff, like, you know, I let it slide just because that's the plot of the movie, but that part is handled a little cheesily and a little like kind of thrown in. But you know, you got yourself a fun movie. Blaze, what are your initial thoughts though on the movie?
Have you ever seen the film Back to the Future?
Luckily I have, so I understood everything that this movie is trying to convey.
Have you seen the movie Back to the Future? Basically, I'm living that movie right now, which is how I know there's gonna be a murder tonight.
Hate time travel movies. They never make any sense.
But yeah, I felt like Totally Killer was just this new film that a lot of people have been comparing to, and I think, or I'm not sure. I guess I'll ask you. I'll go to my correspondent, but similar in tone to maybe a Happy Death Day or Freaky. I haven't seen either of those films, but I know you have.
Oh, I'm surprised you haven't. But yeah, this, like, I guess you could say this is like a spiritual triple feature kind of movie to all two of those, because yeah, all like overall, like this has that same tone, and it's kind of hard to compare those two movies to something else that you might have seen, just because, yeah, I guess if I was going to describe this movie, I would say, oh yeah, it's the vibes of like Freaky meets or Happy Death Day meets Scream or something. But yeah, overall, like, yeah, it does capture the vibes of that movie, and it is very much within that realm. And that seems to be one of the things that Blumhouse is doing a little bit better, because there's times where I like Blumhouse and there's times where I absolutely hate them. But this is like that kind of subgenre that I think they're handling pretty well so far.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like this definitely leans more towards horror comedy. I'm not sure if those films, I always got the vibe that they're more horror first, comedy second. This definitely is a more comedy first, horror second. There are horrific scenes, but I feel like it kind of gets dialed back a little bit as the film goes on, and it focuses more on that comedic aspect. I enjoyed this film overall, but I will say I felt like it was almost too on the nose sometimes, that it's comedy and didn't really give it enough time to breathe. And it does at times. It could be that I'm on like a Scooby-Doo kick right now for the month of October, but it did feel at times very Scooby-Doo-esque, very silly, but almost like guessing like who's the killer, who's behind that mask. And then something about that mask for me just didn't, maybe that like, I hated that mask. I don't know. It just hated it.
It's the piercing that was driving me crazy, because I'm like, is that piercing? Did it come with the mask, or is it like the killer like has a piercing and just like needs to keep it pierced at all times or something? Like, yeah, that was like, I was cracking up at that just the whole time I was watching. I was like, what is up with the piercing? Like that's not even really like necessarily like an 80s thing, unless, I mean, I didn't grow up in the 80s, so I wouldn't know, but like, yeah, I'm sure people had piercings in the 80s like that, but it wasn't like a thing though, right?
It has George Michael energy.
Okay.
But also I felt like, is it foam or is it actual like jewelry, the piercing? You know, is it like foam attached to the mask? You know, like, yeah. Have you ever got a mask where it had like maybe earrings on it and it's like foam instead? It's not like, or just more mask material like latex. It's not actually like a real jewelry. It felt like it was foam to me. I don't know. It just bothered me. It's a little nitpicky thing, but it was annoying.
Yeah. Well, also, I think the killer also like changes shape throughout the movies too. So that was kind of bothering me. I was like, well, obviously, like they have the same body form as this person. So it's obviously that's the killer. But overall, like I'll get into spoilers a little bit right here. I'm not going to spoil who the like killers are necessarily. That's a spoiler in itself right there. I just said plural. But I didn't expect two killers. Like they kind of say that halfway into the movie, like maybe there's two killers, but I kind of just threw away that line and didn't expect it. I predicted that first killer, but I was just like, the body doesn't match that guy though. That's the only thing that's what's throwing me off, but I feel like it's got to be him. And I was right on that, but then when the second killer came in, I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming. But overall, like I like the movie. It's got some fun plot ideas and it like does jump, like the jokes work for me, but I just thought it didn't stick the landing. A lot felt very rushed at the end, and like, they kind of make a joke out of like everything and just speed round everything super quickly, and you do get like a little bit of extra information in the end credits as jokes, but just like I felt like because this movie is pretty short, it easily could have like been stretched out, just like a little extra 10 minutes. Like I wouldn't have bothered. As long as you have a good movie, I don't mind a movie being long. And this movie seems to be very well liked by a lot of people too. It definitely captured the vibe that My Best Friend's Exorcism tried to do last year, much better this year round on Amazon.
I think it did, but I would go to bat to say that I like My Best Friend's Exorcism a lot better than this movie. I think that the thing I enjoyed more about My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I think that's a great comparison, because I do feel like both the films are trying to capture the same audience. They're both kind of horror comedies. I thought that film was definitely like really funny at times, but I felt like it was more horrific, or trying to be more horror first. It felt like at times, especially like the climax, where I felt like this always was trying to go for more comedy. I mean, you can see it just in the mask itself. It's just like there's nothing really scary about it. I thought this film started with just a really awesome opening. It was very impressive, really like balls to the walls with that scene of the mom and then the killer. It just like it never felt horrific, because it's kind of like feels like the killer is almost popping a pin in any tension that the horror elements might bring. But it did feel like that opening really like got the film started off really strong, but it kind of peters out, kind of loses that sense. Especially I felt like it was so good at like winking at the camera in the beginning and playing fun at like how the characters are being like kind of very campy, and I love those elements to it. But almost when we go back in time, it feels like we're more making fun of, and the comedy is really based around the differences in time of what you could get away with technically in the 80s, and like now that's actually not appropriate.
Right. Yeah, and that was one thing like I did want to address also is because I agree with it overall kind of having a Scooby-Doo element. You said that you've been watching a lot of it and it felt like that. I did like that aspect of, it's kids trying to solve it without like the help of parents and stuff. And, the entire gang does have some fun chemistry, even though some of them dislike each other and stuff. And, they kind of band together. But overall, these are horrible people too, though. Like, it's not just because, it's the 80s is a different time. Like, no, they're actually like some of them are terrible, and the mom needed to be addressed at times too, because she was awful. And like, who's just that rude to a person right away? Like, yeah, you might have been the cool clique person, but just like I felt like there wasn't enough justification towards her to like she was kind of a jerk the whole time and stuff too. And like definitely like I would have loved to have seen in the future when you were kind of a jerk in high school and stuff. You need to like make amends with some of those kids you were jerks to, because overall, they kind of throw in like, oh, she was uninvolved with the death of someone, like she was actually friends with that person, but she still called that person Fat Trish and stuff at one point. She probably still even though she didn't talk with Trish at the time of her death, she was still talking with her friends at the time. And that why are you still friends with these people who apparently are involved with the murder of your friend, even though you necessarily had nothing to do with it? So at the end of the day, you're keeping these people around too. And I get it, it's high school, you're trying to keep certain cliques together and just have this weird status quo within high school. But just that element, I wish was addressed at times too. It doesn't need to be, but just I thought the mom got off a little too easy.
Yeah, almost like we just use the excuse of being in a time where stuff wasn't maybe more politically correct as being the problem instead of the actual people that were problematic in a sense.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, as for this film, I know it's this director, I think it's like it's not their first feature, obviously. I think that was on Netflix. I think this is like their sophomore film. They've written a ton of other stuff, but
first horror film though, I believe. Yeah,
first horror film. So I thought it was like an interesting take on a horror movie. You definitely could tell it's coming from outside the genre, but it was definitely something that I feel like will appease mass audiences. This seems like something you could easily put on for somebody who's not a horror fan, and they might actually really enjoy it because it has, you know, fun comedic elements. It never felt like too grotesque or anything, or super suspenseful or horrific. So this is kind of like that. I think we had mentioned it last year with My Best Friend's Exorcism. Like, it's a great like softball horror film to start somebody out in that avenue if they want to watch something around Halloween time that's, you know, more leaning towards horror but maybe not so horrific. I mean, granted, this film does have like a decent amount of gore, but I just felt like it would be easier to get someone into this because there's enough laughs in there to sustain, you know, the viewing where you're not going to be terrified and have nightmares going to bed.
Exactly, yeah, and that's makes this genre a little fun because we're constantly saying like, where's this stuff that was like, you know, a kids movie but is like kind of scary and prepares you and kind of gets you into the horror genre. Stuff for us growing up was like, you know, things like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Ernest Scared Stupid. We don't get any of that these days, but I guess nowadays with just like, you know, modern technology and social media, just all kids are seeing the most crazy, wild, realistic, real life stuff that, like, you know, a movie like this isn't like that crazy to them, so this is a good starter for them necessarily. So yeah, I like this movie. It fits in quite well with Happy Death Day and Freaky. I think Freaky is the goriest of the three by far. Happy Death Day I think was PG-13, so that's probably the safest to watch. This movie I think was still rated R, but I like the characters. I like the chemistry between everyone. It works really well, and like I said, it just feels a little too rushed, and like some of the stuff like I wish was explained a little bit better at times, because I did have the devil's lettuce. It's legal in California watching this, and you know, a movie like this shouldn't be confused about times. I was like, wait, what? I gotta rewind that. I was like, who's dad? Someone killed their dad. I was like, what? That thing threw me off at one point. And then the emo artist too, and the Mandela effect. It's played for jokes, but was still funny. But yeah, overall, it's a good time.
Definitely. I recommend anyone checking this out. If you have Amazon Prime, it's available for you. So go ahead and watch this movie.
Yeah, you can check it out through our Amazon affiliate link in our description box below. That's a great way to help support it if you don't have an Amazon account. Also, come back here and leave a comment telling us what you thought about the movie.
And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
And speaking of updates, catch all our social media links down below. We got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We also got our own personal letterbox accounts. That'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new video.